I get why you would petition your school to disinvite a speaker, right? But the list of people who've been disinvited is too long. Like there are people who I think you can take a stand and go, no, not at our school. If it's an official school invitation, if the Republican Party is inviting them, well then you got to let them come. That's it. But I mean, I could see protesting, I know you debated her, but I could see saying no to Ann Coulter. But you can't say no to Ben Shapiro. Like, like you don't agree with Ben Shapiro, but you got to let the guy gets to speak. There's no question that he gets to speak.
I don't even care about having Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter is deeply unpopular, right? Like deeply unpopular. So let her go share her deeply unpopular ideas. Just yesterday, she was calling for death squads to go after immigrants. Like she's a terrible, horrible person.
But I think,
go ahead.
I just mean, I think that to death squads to immigrants, I think if your college is inviting her, you can say, no, we don't have to give a platform to someone who calls for death squads to immigrants. That's too far. Nuking Muslim countries, that's too far, right? Conservatives, who I think have largely deeply popular ideas like Ben Shapiro, but he's got an argument and you should hear him out. And if you want to have a counter protest, fine, but he gets to speak. I just mean there is some line. They can't invite anyone. If they said, like I said, where Heinrich Himmler's coming in to speak, right? You could say, no, we're not going to hear from Joseph Stalin. We're not going to hear from Himmler. Right, I think to me that's okay.
But at the same time, it's a tough line to draw.
It is a tough line to draw, but I could draw it.
Here's the thing. Here's another thing.
I'm the guy to draw it. Yeah.
Here's another thing to keep in mind. Just because they're not going to go, let's say these students are successful and they stop who they consider an offensive speaker from speaking on their campus. That doesn't like brush the situation under the rug and that's it. That person can't spread their message anymore. They can and they will spread their message. In fact, some of the protests that went down in Berkeley only amplified their message.
That's right.
And so it's so counterproductive. I mean, look, I agree with where the students are coming from, right? I feel them and it's frustrating. But at the same time, you gotta think about a strategy that's actually productive and makes them look like clowns and makes you look like the good guy, not you looking like the bad guy, which is how these situations usually unravel. I think it would be more successful if you just completely ignore them. No one goes to their speeches except for the few people from whatever Patriot organization is at Berkeley. And then how about you host a progressive speaker that's obviously going to attract a much larger crowd.
That's right. Yeah, or, and then show up afterwards and turn your back, whatever. There are plenty of symbolic gestures, but you got to let the people. You basically have to let them speak.
So let me tell you how much, because it's not just Berkeley. This is affecting every campus, and it affects every speaker, every professor, if they're known to have any political ideology, right? Right now, in the department that I teach in, there's like nonstop ongoing discussions about First Amendment issues, right? So what do you do when a student walks into your classroom in the middle of your lecture and interrupts you because they don't like something that you've done in the past, something that you've said in the past? Like you have to now go through training and strategies in order to deal with these issues. And think about it, like a lot of professors barely get paid anything. They're working like crazy and it's a very selfless job, right? They're doing it because they love it. And so to add on to all of that stress, you have to worry about someone coming in and interrupting your class and trying to make it difficult for you to even get through your lecture. Like it's insane.
Just guys, I had conservative professors, I had liberal professors. It's okay, it's okay. Look, I'm an agnostic. I have never ever wanted to shut down a religious person from speaking because I have no fear at all that they're going to convince me or convince someone else. Like, no, but you don't get it. Jesus was born of a virgin. Okay, you can make that case all day long, 1,000 times over. It's never going to be true. I'm not threatened by it. I'll, let them freaking speak. Okay, so, and by the way, at Berkeley, where they're doing that free speech week, there are now going to be counter speeches, and one of our hosts, Hassan Piker, is going to go.
No, let me jump in because you guys should be aware of this because this is exactly what they want. So Milo Yiannopoulos, Ann Coulter, all the deplorable people that we know about, tried to do a free speech week at Berkeley. Berkeley was completely cooperating with them, but the student organization behind Free Speech Week did not meet the deadlines in order to have the indoor event. So the administrators are like, look, you're not giving us enough time to make sure we have the proper setup, the infrastructure, the cops necessary to keep the area secure. And unfortunately, we can't host it indoors anymore because you missed the deadline. You're gonna have to host it outside. I get a press release today, and guess what that press release said? Because the student organization is fearful of Antifa, they have decided to move Free Speech Week off campus. No, they're not fearful of Antifa.
That's not what happened.
They did not meet the deadlines, okay? But they twist the message and they make it seem like, these liberals are trying to stop them from speaking.
That's also, but like,
it's so frustrating.
So it's important that colleges have a free exchange of ideas. They do, and Milo and Ann, who else is going?
Nobody knows. Okay. They keep lying.
So those two people, like, look, man, if you got to have it off campus like that, that's actually kind of irrelevant. Like, here's what's not a problem. Here's what's not happening in America. Milo and Ann Coulter aren't being heard. I mean,
they're being heard.
They're being heard. They're being heard plenty, and they are in fact evidence that the First Amendment is working and working well. And if a school doesn't want to host them, they don't have to host them. And if a school invites them under the penumbra of the entire school to me rather than a specific organization in the school, I think students can say, no, we don't want that. And the school can react however they want, and then the people can go speak somewhere else. That's part of the exchange of ideas. Once they're coming, they get to speak.
And by the way, the reason they don't want to do it off campus, which could be just as effective, is because they want the money. So it's not just about free speech, they get paid for these speeches. So anyway.
So let me give you a few more results from this survey. Here's another question posed to the respondents. A student group opposed to the speaker uses violence to prevent the speaker from speaking. Do you agree or disagree that the student group's actions are acceptable?
No.
So here is a graph showing those who agree. Among all respondents, 19% think it's acceptable to use violence to stop this form of speech. Among Democrats, it's 20%, and would you look at that? Among Republicans, it's 22%. Among independents, 16%, females 10%, males 30%.
I mean, women are the big winners in this poll. It's so obvious who answers yes to that. What kind of Neanderthal answers yes to that?
Unfortunately, 1/5 of the population, at least in these universities and the people that they asked. So that is, 20% is a bad number, man. That's 20% of the willing to use violence. That is way too high. And unsurprisingly here, the right wing is willing to use violence a little bit more.
That's statistically insignificant.
Yeah, but it's a small number, I agree with you. The fact that the progressives are anywhere near the right wing on the willingness to use violence is outrageous. Yeah, that's right. The whole point of being a progressive is that you don't go in that direction.
God, college kids are, this is a bad poll for college kids.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what though, so I think that part of what's happening here, guys, is that the folks have actually grabbed pitchforks.
Yeah.
And so this is exactly what we're trying to prevent. And I think that this is why I keep hammering the establishment. Because in their bubble, everything is wonderful, and they're not seeing these pitchforks, and we are, and they're right behind us. So we got to find a way to bring actual justice and equality to the country. Otherwise, this is going to go south, and it's going to go south pretty quickly. I mean, if that number moves from 20% to 40%, we're in a world of pain, and it then becomes a different country.
To that point, just about pitchforks and anger and the establishment maybe not getting that, Dave Weigel wrote a tweet today that I retweeted that I liked quite a bit. It includes favorability ratings for Bernie Sanders and for Lindsey Graham.
Oh, this ought to be great.
So Bernie Sanders right now is at 57-33. Favorable, right? And Lindsey Graham, who is admittedly far less known and his numbers are he's at 56 unfavorable, 44 favorable. But he's also known a lot less, right? So, and then Weigel, while retweeting those numbers, wrote, in DC, Lindsey Graham is the affable green room guy.
Yes.
And Bernie Sanders is a wild leftist, right?
Yeah, that's a great tweet by Dave.
And in the world, Bernie Sanders is enormously popular. Lindsey Graham is unknown and unpopular.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to this day, when I go to New York and DC, I just went to New York and I talk to folks who are well-meaning, good guys. They still don't get it. Bernie's wild-eyed, Bernie's radical. No, dude, that 20% that's willing to use violence, that's radical.
Yeah, and also
Bernie is nowhere near radical.
And it's so, I mean, you don't have to have taken a bunch of government classes and spent your life studying politics to know that, like, yeah, and the 17 Democrats who've come out for single payer, right? We're not about to get single payer. We're obviously not getting single payer in the Trump administration, right? That's patently obvious. He wouldn't sign it. Although who knows, it's him, actually. Yeah. But if Democrats were to win the Senate and the House, but he's not going to pay. But this is how that process works. And then when there's a negotiation, when there's another president, the negotiation includes a bunch of people arguing for single payer, and the negotiation is made over here. Yeah. And then who knows? In 20 years or 2 years, we may have it. It's not crazy. This is how you change this is how you get everybody covered.
Yeah, it's just, man, sometimes I gotta say it, man, that I can't stand Washington. The fact that they like Lindsey Graham and think that he's more representative of the American people, despite all available evidence than Bernie Sanders, it's just fucking gross. And it's what's gonna lead to bad things. They are so out of whack with the rest of the country. If you like this clip of the Young Turks, there's a whole live 2-hour show, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day, and you can download it or stream it and watch it without ads if you become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.